Welcome to Shea Honey, the podcast empowering women to make a creative career change. In each episode, I interview an inspiring woman who's taken a risk and made a significant career change in order to make their life work better for them. Today, I'm delighted to be talking to florist Amy Carlile. Amy started her career as an actuary, working for a firm for 8 years before she realised it was time for her to make a change. Okay, so tell me about your original career and how you got into that in the first place.
Okay, so my original career, I used to be an actuarial consultant. So I'm a part qualified actuary. For people who don't know what an actuary is, they, in one sentence, it helps for risk management in mainly financial institutions, but there are lots of different areas that you can specialise in. So I specialised in general insurance, so anything that isn't to do with insuring people and lives. And then the company that I worked for actually specialised in creating software for other actuaries to use. So how I got into that, very academic at school, loved like maths and science, and just kind of enjoyed that so much that it made sense to kind of keep following that as I went through A levels and uni and stuff. But at the same time, I was also extremely creative. So I always love art, would always have a craft going on behind the scenes. But to be honest, it just never really occurred to me that I could kind of go down that path. And along the way, I've met quite a few friends who do have quite a creative career. So friends who did textiles and stuff at uni and have gone on to carry that on. But I just never really, I did, from my point of view, I just couldn't really see how I could make my little crafts in the background a bigger thing. So I did maths and sciences at A level, went to Loughborough University and did financial maths, so joint honours, which I would still recommend people, and I'm glad I did it. So I did 2/3 maths, a third finance, and really enjoyed my time there and met some great people. I originally started doing that course because I thought I wanted to go into either banking or accounting, because I suppose a bit of a background, where I grew up, not many people kind of went to go work in the city. It was quite a rural town. So I kind of thought you've made it if you become an accountant type thing. And that's still great, but that's kind of the only thing I thought I could do. But then at uni, I kind of found the banking side. So I thought I wanted to go into that, and got a year-long internship with a big bank down in London, and I just didn't really like it. I just very much felt like the tiniest fish in the biggest pond, and I just don't think I really got out of it what I needed, and it was very turn the handle, didn't really get to do anything too fun. So I decided I didn't want to do it, but I would still again recommend doing that sort of course to anybody, because it meant that I had a year where it didn't really matter if I needed to use that going forward. So a few friends on my course were also looking at the actuarial side, or insurance side, which I hadn't really been aware of before as well. And I actually started with a startup. So there was 15 of us at the beginning. We grew to 100 plus within 5 or 6 years. And I really liked it. It's probably as creative as an actuarial job as you could get, because it was very much building things from scratch, designing software, designing screens for people to interact with. So I kind of scratched that itch a bit in that way, but it was just very I was sat at a desk every day, and I just in the end, it's just not what I could see myself doing in the long run. But yeah, that's what I used to do anyway.
Great. And how long were you in that job for?
I was at the same company for 8 years, in the end, 7.5. So a while, but not too long.
Yeah. And what was there a particular moment or a period of time where you just felt like it's time to move on, it's time to do something different? Perhaps you can tell us a bit more about that.
I think so. In September 2023. I think like the beginning of like 2022, I think it was a combination of a few things. I think we'd obviously been in the pandemic for a few years by that point, and I we were working at home a lot, and I think everyone kind of was just a bit like frustrated. So I think I felt that as well as I can imagine what a lot of other
Mm.
people did. Um, I'd also like I'd always had in the back of my mind that I wanted my own business, and I think it took me a while to realize that not everyone kind of thinks that they want their own business, and I was like, I'm gonna need to do it at some point, so maybe I should do it. And then I think my light bulb moment was I was like, I don't know what I want to do. So I got in touch with a life coach, and like it sounds I paid for like 6 sessions or something. I had two, and I realized I got really frustrated because I realized I wanted this life coach to tell me to quit my job and go and do something, and she wasn't telling me that. She was trying to make me feel better about the situation that I was in my current workplace, which was great, and that was really lovely. But I think the reason I then didn't have the rest of my sessions was because I was like, I literally just want you to tell me to quit my job. And then that was the realization of you've got to do it for yourself, and you've got to make those moves if you want to do something different. And yeah, I was just kind of like, I don't want to do this, have the stress and like kind of like the sedentary job for the next 30 years that I was previously doing. I was like, I just can't do that. So it was a combination of all those things. But I think the pinpoint was like that life coach not telling me to quit. And I wanted to.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I didn't see it wasn't a life coach for me, but it was the equivalent of that was for me was my husband, who for kind of several weeks, if not a couple of months, I'd sort of periodically kind of moan at him, or moan to him, not moan at him, but moan to him about work and stuff. And I think, like you, I wanted him to just say, well, quit your job then. And of
Yeah.
course, like, he wasn't just going to come out with that. I mean, we kind of eventually got to that point, but
Yeah.
like you say, it has to come from yourself, doesn't it? But it's interesting that we both had that desire for somebody else, somebody external, to just kind of
Yeah.
say that.
I think you're just so used to kind of being told what the next step is along the way. Like even at, like from school, you go all the way through to like your qualifications, and then even at work, in a way, you still always have those. So like in a when you don't own your own business, you kind of always have those levels to work towards. And in some companies, it's very much you get promoted like once a year, once every 2 years,
Yeah.
and it's so easy to just be like, oh, that's the next step, that's the next step, and you just kind of get wrapped up in it. And yeah, it just wasn't. I just needed something different.
Yeah, that's great. And you mentioned when we spoke before that the idea of 30 more years in the same job, you said that was the equivalent of 3 times more of what you'd already done. I thought that was a really good way of kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, I think like that was kind of the way for me to like imagine it. And I'd met so many people along the way in my career who had been at the same company for 30 years or had been doing this job for like 40 years, and I couldn't imagine it for myself. It was a very interesting company that I worked at, and what they're doing is so cool, and I still try and keep up with a lot of people and like what they're doing, but it just, yeah, I needed something different.
Yeah, I think it's that time period just gives you that perspective on where you want to be, and yeah, not imagining yourself there in 30 years time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that it was like beginning of 2022 when you started to kind of have these thoughts about making a change. But how long did it take you to formulate your plan? I've written escape plan, but it's not literally an escape plan, but your plan to make that change a reality.
I think it was over, I suppose it was over about a year and a half from like realizing that it wasn't really what I wanted to do versus actually finishing my previous role. Um, so I kind of started to look for different roles in the industry. Like I didn't know because I couldn't quite figure out whether it was like, did I want to do something completely different? Was it just I want to do something different to like my current role? Did I just need a change in who I was working with? And I started looking for similar jobs at the beginning of 2022. And I went for a few interviews, but I wasn't like overly excited. And like, I think it probably came across that I wasn't like overly thrilled about like going for these jobs. Um, it's quite a stressful environment, like, and quite a lot of pressure. The what do you call it, like, um you know what I mean, like, type of job that I used to have. Can't think of the word.
putting yourself in that scenario of going for an interview, it's you have to be in the right mindset for it, don't you? And you've got to kind of dress the part, you've got to talk the talk,
Yeah.
and it's quite a lot. Yeah, and if you're not completely into that, then
Yeah.
it's even harder, I guess.
Yeah. And then I suppose, like, partway through last year, the firm that I was working for, so the startup that I'd been with, we got acquired by a huge firm. And I thought, okay, well, maybe the stress will go away a bit because we had like a big investment in our team. So, like, maybe it will change. I thought I'll give it a go. Like, I love the people that I worked with, and I did like what we were working towards. But it didn't change as much as I needed it to. And I've always been quite, like, savvy with saving and making sure I've got, like, enough behind me. And I just thought, I don't have the mind space to figure out what I wanted to do. So I was like, I'm just gonna take the summer off. I'm gonna wait for bonus season and then I'm just gonna, like, go away and, like, do loads of courses, have a think about it, and then, like, figure out in the autumn, like, what I wanted to do. So yeah, I kind of gave it to, like, the beginning of 2023, and then I had a 3 month notice period. And then I ended up finishing at the end of June, this year. So yeah, so short answer, a year, and then long answer was just my ramble that I went on.
No, that's good. And I think the point is that it does take a while, doesn't it? It's not, well, I think for most people it requires that kind of gradual realization and then actually putting things into action. And maybe going for those interviews was helpful for you to actually figure out what you didn't want to do as
Yeah.
much as what you did want to do next.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I think those kinds of experiences are positive, but in the kind of reverse sense.
Yeah, yeah, because you're kind of like, oh, I think this is what I want, and then you realize you don't. But at least it's part of the puzzle that you're figuring out,
Yeah.
rather than it just being one big unanswered question, which I think is how I felt a year and a half ago.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And did you when you by the time you finished your job in June, had you kind of like figured out by that point that floristry was the thing that you were going to go into, or were you still kind of
I was pretty certain by that point, and that wasn't the original plan. I'd kind of booked some taster sessions and some courses and had reached out to a lot of other florists, kind of from, like, January this year through to when I finished. And yeah, I think by the time it got to June, I was like, yeah, I think this is definitely what I want to do. And that's what I was telling people as I was finishing my job, is like, that's what I'm going to go and do.
And how did
Yeah.
it feel to tell people that what you were going to do? Because I think you mentioned somewhere in your notes that you sent over to me that you were kind of not sure how other people would kind of react to you saying that. But what was their reaction when you told them that?
I think everyone was really confused, to put it bluntly. Watching people's faces as I told them, especially my old colleagues, because everyone's very, like, academic, like, does a lot of coding, works with very, like, academic people. I could just see their face be like, what are you doing? And still, like, a few, like, friends and family, like, they've all been very supportive. But I think at first it was like, where has this come from? It's so different. Um, so yeah, sorry, I can't remember what the original the
Well, no,
question
I
was.
think I was just interested in the reaction of others to you telling them that that's what you were going to do, because I think part of, well, sometimes part of actually making the step to do something different is having the confidence, isn't it, to kind of just put yourself out there and say, yeah, this is me, I'm doing this now, and whatever anyone thinks, it doesn't really matter. But it's quite hard to get to that point, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think I just kind of had to, like, back myself and just say this is what I was doing, because it's almost part of the being your own business owner. You just got to be like, this is what I'm doing. This is who I am, and you'll slowly become what you're saying you are.
Definitely. I think that is absolutely true. Yeah, if you believe it, then other people will, they'll follow for sure.
Yeah.
And how how did you get into, what was it about floristry, and how did you kind of discover that as a career, that you wanted to move into?
Um, it was a bit random. Well, it wasn't totally random. I've been doing lots of wedding planning because I'm getting married myself in March, and it got to the point where I needed to start looking for florists, and I just became like obsessed with looking through like all different florists on like social media, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, it's creative. It was the first thing that I also kind of like thought of that I could see myself making money from in a creative way. Like I've been like, I've done like, I was like, oh, I could become like a pottery person. I was like, even to like to the point where I was like, oh, I could even become a chef. Like there's been so many things that I've wanted to do, but this was the first thing that I was like, okay, I actually think I can make this happen. So I messaged my florist for my own wedding florist and was like, is it really mad that think I want to become a florist? And she was like, no, not at all. That's literally exactly how I got into it myself. And I was like, oh, I was like, well, if all these other people can do it, like I think I can do it as well. So yeah, it wasn't anything like I can't say I've always like been in love with flowers. Like I've always loved it when I've like kind of like been given some myself, but I've never even thought about that as a career, and it just kind of like crept up on me. But yeah, it's it's great.
I think that's a great story though, because you've connected with it in a way that meant something to you because of the particular time in your life that you were needing that, or
Yeah.
needing to look out for that. And I think that's such a nice way to discover something, because you were searching for another, or potential job that you could do, but you kind of found it almost inadvertently, I guess, through
Yeah.
your own wedding planning, which is so
Yeah.
nice. And did, when you kind of said that to your florist, have they kind of helped you to, or pointed you in some helpful directions in terms of?
Um, Not my particular wedding florist, mainly because I didn't want to like freak her out by being like, I'm definitely doing this. um, and didn't want to be like seem like a really like needy client. But I've reached out to quite a few other florists kind of like through social media, and just people who are like local to the area, and people have been so helpful and so lovely, in terms of like giving advice and like giving me opportunities and kind of like pointers on where like the amount of training you should do, or like even just like the little confidence boost sometimes. Like it's just someone else to be in your corner being like, yeah, you're doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when you're, especially when you have your own business, you need other people, don't you, that are doing a similar thing to be able to kind of meet up with and bounce ideas off. And I guess sometimes the work gets spread around a little bit. And if somebody's got too much work on and they can't do it all, they might pass it on to other people that they know who are local. So I guess those networks are so important. And
Yeah, they are. And a lot of florists like don't tend to have full-time employees working with them just because of the nature of how business comes in. So there's a lot of freelancing opportunities in the floristry world. So like having that network is super useful. And in terms of like people, asking you to come and help with them, but also if people see like an opportunity and it's in like your area of the UK, they'll like I've had it where florists have like pinged that over to me, and then I've ended up with a couple of days of extra work, which has been so lovely. It's just been very supportive. Yeah, I suppose like on a tangential point, I think my old company was very male dominated, and this industry is very female dominated. And I was very intrigued to see how that would kind of change, because I did really like the people I worked with in my old job, and it was very like to the point. Like you knew where you stood, and it just worked very well. So I was a bit like hesitant, but everyone's been really lovely who I've met along the way, which has been a relief.
yeah, well, that's so great that it's shaping up in that way. Um, so have you had any moments of regret so far, or anything that you think, oh God, I really miss my old job?
There's been a few things, I suppose. The money, let's be blunt.
Yeah, yeah.
I came from like my old job had like I had an amazing package. I was more than comfortable on like a monthly like salary income. So there are some I've got like a big buffer, so it's okay. But sometimes, yeah, when you don't have that like drop of money coming into your account every month, or like you're the one that needs to chase up on like the invoices and stuff. It's a bit like, okay, this is a lot more this is a lot more there's a lot more admin. There's a lot, yeah, you just don't know what you just don't know when. It's yeah, how am I trying to say it? It's just not as free, it's not as frequent. It's just different. It's just
Yeah.
very different. Um, I suppose I think at first when I hadn't got many jobs booked up, because obviously it's quite a lead time with people booking you in like the floristry world. I think I really missed the like teamwork because I think I've almost gone from like one extreme to the other where I was like on meetings all day every day and it was almost like a bit like overstimulation of people to kind of like it's just me.
Mm.
So sometimes I miss like being able to bounce ideas off and speaking to people like a lot of the day, but I do think it's helped me in the long run to just be able to have a bit more headspace to work on things. Um, and then I think I just also did not appreciate how many things you have to figure out with your own business. Like, I don't think I regret that. It's not like a regret.
Mm.
It's just until you do it, you just do not appreciate how many plates you've got to juggle and how many things you've got to get involved with. And I do love it because it means that I can just like bounce around on tasks. But yeah, it's like one day when you've got like 10 things that you must do and you've got to speak to like your accountant and you've got to like get some marketing out and you've got to like send a quote and you've got somebody asking you loads of questions. It's just like, oh, whoa, that's all on me, which I don't think I really appreciated, but I also love it at the same time.
And do you think that I'm certain that you have got lots of transferable skills that you've taken from your previous job into your new role, but maybe you can just pinpoint a few of those skills that you think have set you up in a really
Yeah,
positive way?
it was very weird, actually. I just didn't appreciate how many transferable skills there would be. But essentially, my old job was very like client facing, like project focused. And essentially, that is what a wedding florist is. Like, you have your clients that you've got to onboard and work with and have all that design work with. And it's essentially like every wedding is like a mini project. So I think my planning and organization skills from my previous job like have helped so much. Um, and then just being able to speak with clients and being confident and knowing like how to kind of like present yourself, like what information they might need. And then I think the other one is like problem solving. My previous job was very much like, don't want to say firefighting, but there'd always be something that would crop up that you wouldn't expect. And just being able to kind of like keep a clear head and figure out the next steps and not have a meltdown is definitely has definitely helped coming into this industry because the amount of things that can go wrong when you're dealing with like a live product is like the list just goes on. So I think just being able to be like, right, let's fix this problem and do it in a way that the client doesn't know there's a problem. Like it's that's been really helpful. So yeah, very, very surprised in terms of how many transferable skills there were going from one to the other.
I think that's great, isn't it? And in a way, certainly for me, the more I think about that journey of a career, the more you kind of realize that everything you do is feeding into the next thing. Even if you didn't enjoy something so much a few years ago, it's like there'll be something from that I guess that we can take and we can put those skills into action in a different way, in a way that suits us better. But yeah, I feel increasingly like everything just happens for a reason, and it builds that knowledge and that sort of picture of who you are as a person as well as what your job is. And I think maybe when we're younger, like we're not really, I certainly felt like at school I was never really encouraged to think in that way. Everything was very black and white, you either do this or you do that. And I don't know,
no, I completely agree. Like, you learn so many skills from every situation that you're put in, and you kind of just have to think, even if something goes wrong, I always try and be like the positive thinker in terms of like, oh, I've learned something from that. So next time I'll know what to do. And yeah, I've definitely put in, there's definitely a lot of things that I've learned along the way that is really, really helping me. Because in a way, I'm kind of like, would I have always wanted to have would I have wanted to have been a florist like as soon as I finished uni or as soon as I finished A levels? And I'm like, maybe, but actually I think all of the skills I've learned in the last like 8 to 12 years, I just think it's put me in such a better position for coming into this in terms of like confidence as well.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd have been this confident if I'd have done this straight away. I definitely wouldn't have the like technical skills that I have, which really helped me kind of like churning through my quotes and stuff. So yeah, I completely agree with like everything happens for a reason, and you're kind of in the place where you need to be at that moment in time.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, a wedding, also anything to do with a wedding is you need to have a cool head, don't you? You've got to kind of be able to just deal with anything that might come at you.
Yeah.
But I guess that's quite exciting as well in some respects, the unknown.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think like you're every wedding's like completely different as well. Um, but yeah, there's it's always very fun, and they're always very beautiful and very lovely, and it's just very nice to see it all come together.
I think that leads me on actually to my next question, which is about how you feel that this career change has enabled you to be more creative in the way that you live. Obviously, floristry in itself is a creative thing, but has that kind of impacted on the way you live in the rest of your life a little bit more as well?
I think so. It's meant that I can be a bit more flexible, and I think that probably comes down to more of like me owning my own business rather than it being like a creative job. But I think it just, I don't quite know how to phrase it, but I just feel so much more satisfied at the end of the day. And it's such a nice, even when I've had a really long day, like I used to do long days in my previous job, but I had a day a few weeks ago where I was out the house at 7. I didn't get back till 7:30. I was like eating my lunch on the job, but I got to the end of the day and I was like, literally had the best day. And I feel bad saying it, but I don't think I'd have said that if it was the same thing in my current job. And I just have so much more satisfaction and just so much more, yeah, just a lot happier, which is is great. I mean, I know I'm at the beginning of my journey, so I'm sure like after wedding season next year I might be like, oh, so tired. Um
But I think
yeah,
it's being
it's
in control, isn't it? So you're yes, you do if you do a long day, it's hard work, but it's hard work that's all building towards the thing that you're building and you're creating. Whereas perhaps in your previous job, you do a long day, but that was to the benefit of somebody else or
yeah,
the company, I guess.
yeah.
Um, Less about yourself.
No, that's so true. Like you can almost like it's a bit more tangible for you. Like if you've been up till like 10 p.m. like getting quotes out for you, you're like, okay, well, the likelihood is I'm gonna win 75% of those and that's for me. Whereas
Yeah,
if you stayed up till 10 p.m. for like your company, it's like, well, I'll get paid my salary and
yeah,
that's literally it.
yeah,
You're not gonna get any overtime, like type
yeah,
of thing. So yeah, it's a bit more, yeah, you know that everything you choose to do is for your benefit. Yeah, I
yeah.
completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, satisfaction is the kind of key word there. It feels satisfying to be doing that kind of work, partly because the satisfaction is building your business and seeing things sort of flourish and grow and I don't know, I get a buzz from that when it sort of
Yeah.
happens, the equivalent for me, but I think I didn't feel the same way in my kind of previous job
Yeah.
necessarily.
And you're in control of like how much you do and what you do as well. So like in my previous role, if we won a client, I wouldn't be, I would just have to be able to like figure out that project. I
Yeah,
wouldn't have any say in terms of do we have enough people to do it? Like that would have gone into planning, but it probably would have been an extra stress on the team. And I don't get any say if it's like a strategic fit. Whereas if I have someone come to me and it's like it's going to help me get it's going to help me grow my business and it's something that I'm going to really enjoy doing, then great. But if it's not, I can say no.
yeah,
Whereas I wouldn't have had that in my previous role. And it's such a different dynamic. And it's so nice to be able to have that as well.
yeah,
A lot more like satisfaction again, like that word coming back. But yeah,
yeah.
it's great.
That makes sense. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but were your family and friends supportive of your decision?
Yeah, they like again, like some of them are a bit confused, but honestly, like so supportive. Like it's so nice, just like get like the messages being like, oh, that's you're doing great. And a lot like my I saw my mum like last week and my best friend was like, you just seem so much happier and so much more relaxed. And I am, um, to put it bluntly. And yeah, it's yeah, they've been really great. I think they're always there for me when I'm having like a bit of a wobble and they'll always kind of like throw things my way, like, oh, I thought of you when I saw that, like it's a really good idea. But yeah, it's been good.
That's so great that that was the case. And yeah, it can be hard when it kind of comes out of nowhere, but I think it's amazing how people always just want the best for you, don't they? And they want you to be happy and they want you to do the
Yeah,
thing that drives you. And I think when you realize that that's what everyone wants for you, I think that helps you to make those decisions, make those changes happen even quicker. I certainly felt
yeah,
that way. That I think for a while I thought people would think it was a bit weird that I wanted to suddenly become an interior designer. But actually, when I started telling my family and having conversations with my parents and stuff, they were just like, that sounds great. You should just do
sure,
it.
like sure, yeah.
Yeah, just like
I
yeah,
think I
okay.
think it's because they see you they're seeing you in a different light. I think because it's kind of like going back to that trajectory of like I was academic, I did maths, I went to uni, I got a corporate job. I think they were so used to seeing me like go through those motions, and I think they always saw me as being like I'm going to be like when I'm 45, I'm going to be like head of like a massive team and like working in London and carrying on that lifestyle because that's what I'd been doing for the last 8 years. And I think then it was like, okay, no, you're not doing that. You're now going to be working from home to start with and getting to play with flowers all day, which is like only like 20% of it. And
Yeah,
I think it was just that adjustment of, oh, you're gonna not be doing what I thought you were doing. And I think it just took a while. And I think it was also like I'm very like overexcited. So I started telling my friends and family like very early on. And they were like, okay, so where are your clients? And I was like, well, I haven't got any yet. And I think it was just a bit like, okay, we'll see where this goes. And like now I'm a bit more, I've got some like weddings under my belt and I'm a bit more like I've got a bit more of a structure. They can see it, but I do think it's just that shift in how they see you. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I guess they see it from the point of view that I suppose they worry, don't they? They care and they want to make sure that it's a decision that has been thought through. But I think as soon as that becomes clear to them, which it obviously has,
Yeah.
people just support it, don't they? And they go with the flow, and they want you to make it a success, so they do what they can to kind of support that and help it. And I think that that's quite a nice revelation, I think, that comes out of a lot of this kind of career change.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so my last question is, what advice do you have for someone who might be listening to this and is feeling unhappy in their job and thinking of making a change?
Feel like I could talk about this for hours, but I'll keep it like as succinct as possible. But I think like the two main things are one, I touched on it earlier, but you've just got like you own your own life and nobody is going to tell you to do something like with the life coach. Like she's not going to be the person to tell me what I really want. You have to figure it out yourself. And if you want it, you have to go and do it. You, whether it's small or big, like whichever way you approach it, you've got to do it. I think if you're feeling unsure, I think there are so many ways to go and like test these things out. Like the easiest thing to do is just to go and speak to people who do the job you think you want to do. Um, a lot of people like talking about themselves and about their experience, and most people want to help. So if you can just like try and find a few people who are like in that industry that you might want to work in, just to kind of understand like the ins and outs of it, it's really useful. That's what I did to start with. And you you hear the things you want to hear, like, yeah, it's a great job, but you also get like a few like home truths as well, which is really helpful to kind of like manage your own expectations in a way. Um, and then just go and try it if you can. So whether that be go on some courses, like I did a taster day with a friend who wanted to come with me. Um, which was great. And that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to do this. And then if it's not the type of thing where you can go and do a course very easily, just try and do some like part-time work. Like just say you'll do it for free, but at least like, and you might need to give up a few of your like Saturdays or like days off. But if you get to the end of it, and whether you decide that you want to do that, that's great. And you've then put the work in and you've got like the experience to back up that you want to do it, that's great. But if you don't want to do it, that's also great because it just then just shows like you haven't completely redirected your career to something that you don't end up want to do. don't want to do in the end. So I think you just need to do it sooner rather than later as well. Like, don't put it off. Like, don't spend 10 years thinking that you want to be a florist and then try and become it, and then don't even want to do that. I think you've just got to try it. And it could completely change your life just by spending like a few hours researching and spending a bit of time with someone doing the same job. So yeah, I think they're the two things. Just you've got to do it and just try it where and when you can.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I especially what you say about don't keep putting it off. I think it's so easy to kind of talk yourself out of things, isn't it? And actually the moment is now, and if you've got an idea, you've kind of got to run with it, and see where it goes. Because one of the things that made me actually fully take the leap was that I'd about 2 years ago looked up an interior design course online that I was kind of thinking about doing, and I'd even emailed the organization to sort of ask them some questions about the course, and then for some reason I just kind of, I don't know, lost my confidence with it or whatever, and I just didn't follow it through. And then it was about 18 months after that email exchange, the feelings came back again, and through the same cycle. And I looked back through my emails and I found these emails, these exchanges, and saw that it was 18 months earlier. And I was so annoyed at myself that I'd been so close 18 months ago and then just kind of gone, no, I'm not going to do it. Because I thought I could have actually finished the course.
Yeah.
And actually that was one of the a few things, but that was quite a big thing that really just spurred me on to be like, right, okay,
just got to do it. Yeah, no, it's I think that's the key thing. Sometimes you just need someone to like give you a little push, but most of the times no one is. So
yeah.
It's really interesting that you said that though, because it's almost like, yeah, it completely backs up my statement of just like doing it. But some people spend like 10 years thinking they want to do something.
Yeah.
And like that's just such a long time to always, because you're wasting so many of your like thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And it's like you could be spending that time and energy actually like building your own business rather than thinking, oh, should I do that?
Yeah.
So
no, definitely. I fully agree. I think that's really good advice. Amazing. That's so great. Thank you so much for your time. That was Amy Carlile talking to Hannah Ash on the Shea Hanny podcast. If you want to check out Amy's floristry work further, see her website amycarlileflowers.com or Amy Carlile Flowers on Instagram. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next one with you very soon. And you can find me, Hannah Ash, at shayhanny.substack.com or over on Instagram at shay_hanny. Please do leave a comment. I'd always love to hear what you're thinking about my podcast. Have a great week. Hannah.